everyone. Welcome back to episode 3 of Play, Pause, Rewind. Play, Pause, Rewind, the third in the style of Shrek. Just a quick note off the top. We're going to try out foregoing the news for a little bit and see how that goes. See if it tightens our episode length a little bit and just keeps us more focused. But yeah, with that out of the way, Niles, how you doing this week?
I'm doing all right. I'm excited to talk about the main story that we're talking about this week. I changed up filming location yet again. So
look at that.
You're watching the video and you're wondering why is every background different for Niles? It's because I'm trying to find the right location with the best lighting.
He's moved houses 3 times in 6 weeks.
It's becoming a little expensive.
It's financially unhealthy.
Yeah, I don't think that we're gonna have a episode 4. I'm gonna be in the poorhouse by then. So, how you doing, Dylan?
I'm good. Just been chilling the last couple weekends. I'll talk about it a bit later, but I think I read my Stormlight Archive book for like 5 hours on Friday night. I did nothing else until 1:30 in the morning. It was a good night. It was good. I liked it.
That sounds like that's a good Friday night. Just get involved with a really good book or a really good story, and that's
like eat, walk the dog.
That's kind of what we're talking about today too.
Yeah.
Hang out with your dog.
Yeah. So our main story this week is a film from September called The Devil All the Time, and it stars Tom Holland, Bill Skarsgård, Robert Pattinson, Jason Clarke, and Sebastian Stan. And Niall, you suggested this. So what made like inspired you to check this movie out? Were you just curious, or had you heard things about it?
Well, I think what really drew me in was the trailer of it. I remember watching the trailer on like Netflix and just getting sucked into it.
Yeah.
Immediately. Like it looked so gritty and it just looked like such a really compelling story as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm always a fan of Tom Holland as well. Tom Holland is phenomenal in everything that he does. So I wanted to see him in a different role that's like not necessarily Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. So this was a different story for him, and I think all that stuff just kind of drew me into it, honestly.
It's very different for him, for sure.
Absolutely. And, just like you were reading the Mistborn series, right? On like a Friday night, it was just like, we wanted to watch a movie, and this one just popped in my mind, and I was like, I'm watching that. So that's kind of what motivated me to bring this up as a topic for us. But yeah, you already kind of talked about it a little bit, released in September, so we're a little bit late to the discussion party of it. It's been out for a few months, but it's currently got a 7.1 rating on IMDb and 64% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a real gritty, intense, and tragic film. Yeah, anything else that you kind of want to add off the start here?
Yeah, and I think before we talk spoilers about it, I watching it, I was kind of mixed on it. It was definitely interesting and just like weird and violent, and I liked following it, but the narration just pissed me off so much. Like every time there was a potential moment of subtlety, it's like Tom Holland is like walking out of a conversation, and it's like, and he wanted to think this, but instead he was thinking this. I'm like, dude, shut up. I'm trying to watch the movie. You stop telling me what's happening. So that was my main. That was the issue I had with it, and there were points where it was almost ruining the viewing experience for me. Because the scenes themselves a lot of the time were really good, and then that narrator would come in, and the narrator is the author of the book, by the way, based on the credits.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
And we should say too the film was directed by Antonio Campos and written by Antonio and Paulo Campos. Let's see, Antonio Campos. Should have looked this up ahead of time. I didn't. He's produced a lot. Director. Let's see what directing credits he has. He directed one episode of The Punisher show, and a bunch of stuff I have not seen.
Yeah, I think he's a pretty indie director, if I was understanding it right.
It would seem so, yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and I mean, you you mentioned it briefly about the author of the book. So this movie is actually based on a 2011 novel by the same name, The Devil All the Time, and it's by this author named Donald Ray Pollock, who is actually from Knockemstiff, Ohio. So the places in this film are real places, apparently, or at least Knockemstiff. I didn't really look beyond that, to be honest. But the novel itself apparently won numerous awards over the years. It was really critically acclaimed when it came out. And I haven't read it myself, but after watching this film, I might pick it up because I'm kind of a fan of that American Gothic horror stuff. Like, I really like that Cormac McCarthy. I really like Flannery O'Connor, William Faulkner. Like, those are all tremendous writers that are like critical for American literature. So I think this book will probably be regarded for some time in some line of that American Gothic tradition.
Yeah, I didn't.
So I might read that.
I didn't make that connection until I saw your note on it, but tonally I could see similarity to Cormac McCarthy. I haven't read a ton of his stuff. I read The Road, and I watched that movie he wrote with Michael Fassbender, The Counselor. It's really bad, but it has that same tone. Very dark story with intersecting characters and plot lines. And now that you mentioned that, I do see the parallel there, kind of. But
yeah, and I mean, I'm not like a American Gothic horror expert or anything like that, but I do agree that I love The Road, Child of God. Cormac McCarthy is just incredible. So if you have the time to read those books, definitely check them out. But yeah, do you want to give like a? I guess I could do a non-spoiler description. Do you want to do one as well, or I guess we can decide.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot, and then you elaborate, I guess, on where I missed. So it seems, I think the best way to describe it is it's the sort of the intersecting lives of these people in West Virginia, rural West Virginia and Ohio, in time spanning from the early 50s to the late 60s, and they're all kind of connected through themes of religion and evangelicalism, and you just kind of see how pain and violence moves through these people's lives, kind of like a sickness, and connects them all in a negative way. I think that's the best I got for that. What do you think?
That's a good synopsis. I would say it's a tale of violence and chaos. It's a tale of religion and family. But yeah, the interconnected nature of all these different people across, Ohio and West Virginia. I guess another way to frame it is just it's a really good story. It's just like a solid film. If you want to get wrapped up into something that's just like a 2-hour long film that's going to just kind of consume you for a while and it's going to take you out of reality. If you're looking for something that's really captivating and powerful and impactful, this is definitely a story worth checking out.
It is also very upsetting. Fair warning. It's and
yes, it's very upsetting.
Yeah, and I mean there are a lot of, I mean these are spoilers, but if you're gonna watch this movie, you should know about the subject matter it entails. There's sexual misconduct, pedophilia, suicide, just violence against animals, against other people. Like, it's a pretty horrifying picture of like life that this movie paints. It's just fair warning.
Yeah,
you choose to go watch it instead of continuing to listen. But we should probably just go to spoilers, I think, don't you? I feel like it's hard.
Yeah, why not? Let's go to spoilers.
So
yeah, let's dive in. Let's dive into this story. So I'm just pulling up like the IMDb page, so I have like a good reference of the character names.
I should keep that up
and everything.
I think Tom Holland was
right.
Was that his name?
Arvin, yes. So Tom Holland plays the role of Arvin in this film, and Arvin is the main character. He's the protagonist of our film.
The closest
I guess you could also argue there are multiple protagonists, but he is like, he's the core one. And he It's a story about him and his family, and him growing up. We have this whole 30 minutes at the start there, where it's a story of his own father, Bill Skarsgård, who plays Willard, and how he comes to meet his wife, and he starts raising his kid. They purchase some property in West Virginia after he arrives home from the war, World War II, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, World War II.
You get to see, yeah, you get to see Arvin's childhood a little bit there. Tom Holland clearly doesn't play him as a kid; it's a child actor.
Yeah, it's. I think. Hold on, I needed to verify this. I think it's the kid from that evil Superman movie that James Gunn did. It was.
What was that called?
I don't think it was actually him. It wasn't him. Never mind. It looked like him to me, but it's not. Ignore me. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But we get to learn a little bit more about Arvin's upbringing and the role that religion plays with his own father, and eventually, unfortunately, Arvin's she grows ill from, I think it was cancer. They said.
Yeah, she got cancer.
Yeah, and she
didn't specify beyond it.
Yeah, she got cancer. And Bill Skarsgård, his father, Willard, he's having like a hard time coping with it, and he's turning to religion in every aspect that he can to save his wife. Unfortunately, that doesn't work out.
He sacrifices the dog, which was horrifying.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah. That's like
that poor dog.
In stories, for me, I don't know if you know this, but like in movies and in video games, especially, it's like you kill the dog, I'm just gonna like your thing less. Even if it's wonderful, I'm just gonna be like, I hate you for doing this to me.
Yeah, I mean, John Wick would have gone ape shit in this film.
John Wick, John Wick would have messed that man up. I mean,
yeah.
See, that's the only thing that makes it okay in John Wick is like everyone involved in killing the dog is mercilessly like torn to shreds by John Wick. But
you do not want to be a extra in John Wick. But going back to this film, I mean, his dad Willard eventually commits suicide because he can't stand the grief of it, and Arvin is now an orphan. And then he goes off to be raised by his grandmother.
Yes.
At the very same time, there is also, or his grandmother is also raising another orphan, as it turns out. What is her name again?
Laura. Shit. I knew this like 5.
Lenora.
Lenora. Thank you.
Lenora.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Lenora, who's played by Eliza. Yeah. She's played by Eliza Scallon. I don't really know her that very well, but they're kind of raised together as siblings because, unfortunately, Lenora is an orphan as well. We get to meet her parents.
The first of 2 evangelical revival preachers is her dad. And he takes her mom into the woods. So he gets bit by a spider in a demonstration to show his congregation that he's not scared of spiders. And then he goes a bit insane by locking himself into a closet for 2 weeks. And it's like, I figured it out. I know how to talk to God or something. And he takes her into the woods and stabs her in the neck with a screwdriver and tries to resurrect her. And then that's how we intersect with our murder couple for the first significant time, I would say. Wait, he was their first one?
Yeah, I mean they did.
Yeah,
or he was one of the first, I think. But yeah, he meets this couple, husband and wife.
Just Jason Clarke is the husband.
Killers.
Jason Clarke is the husband. And Riley Keough is the wife. What has she been in? Oh, she was in Mad Max Fury Road. She was one of the girls. Capable.
Yeah, it's an absolutely star-studded cast.
Yeah, it really is.
There
was someone else big in the credits too, not in the cast, but someone produced it. full cast and crew.
It was Jake Gyllenhaal, I think.
Yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal produced.
Yeah.
So many names
So a lot
to this thing.
Yeah, lots of actors and actresses attached to this, like star-studded cast all the way around. It's every like 5 minutes once the character's introduced, you're just kind of like, oh, I've seen them before. Oh, I know that person. Like,
it took me a second to recognize Sebastian Stan, Bucky Barnes from Marvel, because he's like not fit in this.
Yeah, he does not look like Bucky Barnes at all. He looks like unhealthy. He looks exactly kind of what you would expect a sheriff in a backwoods country town to look like.
For sure. So you touched on religion a lot, and I think that's what ties this together, because I mean, basically it's the intersecting plot lines between this murder couple, Arvin and Arvin. Really, they're the main driving forces, I would say, for the bulk of the movie.
Yeah.
And the collision course of those two storylines onto each other. But I would say religion is the theme that ties everything together. And to me, I don't know if you agree, but this seemed like a really harsh critique on religion and Christianity itself. It didn't seem like it was just examining the role of religion. It was saying like evangelical Christianity is evil and pollutes and corrupts everything. That was kind of my main takeaway. The only exception that I saw was Sebastian Stan's character, because I don't remember him talking about religion. Do you?
No, I don't really either. I think he was more of just the man. I don't know. I don't know how to identify his role. I was just going to say he's the role of authority off to the side, but even his authority's kind of corrupted. He's just more focused on like the politics of it all.
Yeah. Right. Like, I almost wanted to say like he's the innocent bystander who loses in the end, but he's not, because he's not innocent. He sucks too. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think you start off there on the good note there with the evangelicalism and the idea of like evil in the world. I think you're onto something there with the message behind the movie, that it is a good critique of what it is to be like an evangelical Christian at the time, the role that religion plays in everyone's lives. But it also the film also spoke to the ideas of like innocence versus like corruption there, like abuse of power, and you can definitely see that in Sebastian Stan's character, but you see
and
it
Robert
in every
Pattinson's
single
character, abuse of power. Robert Pattinson is the preacher for the latter half of the movie, the Arvin as Tom Holland section of the movie, and he uses his position to seduce underage girls multiple times, resulting in the suicide of Lenora. That was tough, because she was going to commit suicide and then realized she shouldn't, and then she tripped on the bucket and died.
So much trauma.
I know. And
poor Tom Holland.
Yeah. It was rough, man. There was a lot of bad stuff that happens in this movie.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, it is a harsh critique of who it is to be like an evangelical Christian, because you go to church every Sunday, you're really devout about it, and at the end of the day, that was who Lenora was. She was a very devout Christian. She went all the time, and she spoke with the preacher, and she was really committed to God, just like her mother was.
Yeah.
And then in the end, religion kind of screwed her over to a certain degree. She let it get the pastor did. Like, the pastor got the better of her, and she fell the deception of it, and that resulted in her death. It's really impactful.
Yeah, and maybe it's not a critique of religion itself, but of how people manipulate religion to gain power and influence. Because if you think about like in relation to the title, "The Devil All the Time," maybe it's that people in their pursuit and desire to be closer to God take action that makes them more comparable to the devil. And I don't know, because it seems the only character who did not actively do evil things was Arvin, and he's the only main character to not reference God and religion constantly. He doesn't care about it, and he does bad things, but in self-defense. So that was kind of where I was forming those ideas. Was that
right?
Because even Jason Clarke and what was it, Sandy and Carl? Those are their names, right? The couple.
Yeah, I think so, Sandy.
Because when he's driving around with their victims beforehand, he always asks them if they're like good Christians and stuff like that. So, and it says at the end, remember that getting the good photograph was the only time he ever felt close to God. So he's, yeah. And what they do, by the way, is they take young men out into the woods, have them get in sexually suggestive positions with Sandy, the wife, and then Carl like cuts them up and puts them in boxes and leaves them in the woods.
Yeah, the serial killer aspect of it is that's tough to grapple with because it's just kind of sticks with you too, and to imagine the fact that that a couple like them have been doing this like decades, and there's so many bodies in the woods. It's like, oh my gosh, like it's prolific at that point.
Yeah, for real. They killed a lot of people.
Yeah, they absolutely did. And I mean, I would agree with you to a certain extent about Tom Holland, because he did, as a protagonist, he did kind of seem like the most innocent one. All of his life, he's like had to endure this trauma from like the death of his mom to the death of his dog to the death of his father to the death of Lenora. There's all these like horrible things going on. Like his entire family is basically taken away from him except for like his grandmother and his uncle. But in the end, he does eventually stand up for what is good in the world. He's like, I gotta correct this wrong. The preacher is the reason why Lenora committed suicide. So I'm gonna go confront him about it. And he, of course, kills the preacher. But I think that kind of begs the question: is violence like the best solution for like all this wrongdoing in the world?
Right. Because him doing that with the preacher is what leads to basically every other character death in the movie as a result of that. But also all those people were murderers and or corrupt cop.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's a big thing.
Well, yeah.
Me with this movie, as I just don't know what it's trying to tell me, and I've been trying to figure it out like all night and this morning to talk about it.
I know. Yeah, me too. I think it's difficult to like pull like one singular message out from the devil all the time.
What did you take from the ending? The last line where he's falling asleep and it's like, but now someone was giving him a ride, and he's hitchhiking again, alarmingly close to the last time he hitchhiked and was almost murdered and cut up into little pieces. But I guess what you got to do. What did you think that was getting at? Was getting a ride something that was a theme of the movie that I missed, that was connecting through everything? Because I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, I don't. With the exception of like all the hitchhikers getting rides, to and from, and, like Tom Holland like picking up Lenora like after school and stuff like that. Those are the only times I've really noticed rides being mentioned in the film. But yeah, that's a good catch there with the final line. I think maybe it speaks to like the support system that's been in place for him. Like, he's finally getting outside. He's finally getting outside of Knock'em Stiff, Ohio. He's finally getting away from all these different places of trauma in his life, and he's going to Cincinnati. He's kind of getting out of there, so he's kind of broadening his horizons. So maybe he's just picking up a ride from someone who's just a good person, who's like, at the end of the day, oh, whatever, it's summer of love, it's 1960s, and I'm just giving someone a ride because I'm a good guy, I'm not trying to kill anyone, no ulterior motives, kind of that stuff. Maybe it's just,
I did read that guy at the end as someone who was actually good. but I don't know.
Yeah,
the
he did kind of have some creepy facial hair, but
Yeah, he was just like giving some weird side eye a little bit that made me a bit suspicious, but that may have just been because every other character in the movie was just an asshole. So I don't know.
yeah, right. Yeah, it's I don't know. Yeah, I would say that final line is about optimism, but
Okay.
in that final shot of the movie, you also do see those other scenes of like the chaos
Mm-hmm.
from his like kind of killing rampage to a certain degree. You see people crying at the church. You see the cops stumbling across the sheriff woods, and it's like, oh gosh, like there's all these consequences for his actions, but he's
Mm-hmm.
still being able to look forward and get away and try and find some kind of redeeming quality at the end of his journey. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a tough last line to dissect.
Yeah, I think it's a tough movie to dissect, and it probably warrants a rewatch to fully understand. I don't know if I want to rewatch it anytime soon, but it it was. I appreciate the recommendation though. It's definitely interesting to. It was interesting. It was interesting and disturbing. I don't think I liked it,
Yeah.
but it was. And
Uh,
I really hated that narration though. It really makes me mad. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but in high school, one of my English teachers, and I don't whole cloth agree with this statement, but he said, if your movie starts with narration, you've failed because you're all immediately failing to use the tools of the film medium to tell your story, and you're relying on the tools of a book, which is just the word. So, because every time, and I feel like if you took the narration out of the movie as is, it would be incomprehensible. But that, to me,
right.
means you need to go back to the writer's room and work on your script a little bit and work on your sort of the order in which you tell your story and use the cinematography and the acting and the blocking and all of that to tell your story, which it did in some scenes, but the narration was so overbearing. Any time I could like try to be watching a performance or a shot to try to infer something about the story, the damn narrator showed up and just told me exactly what I was meant to think, and it really bothered me.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think at least at the start of the movie, like right when it started, it was just like 2 quick minutes of like narration. Like here's some quick
Mm-hmm.
facts. Like here's Knockham's. Here's another town. Here's another town. And, like,
Right.
talks really quick. That part really annoyed me because
Mm-hmm.
it was like, I agree. It should be like this should be explained to me through the visual medium rather than someone just talking at me
And dole it
and saying
out
this
over
is what you
time.
need to know.
Like,
Yeah, exactly. But you gotta. I mean, as time went on through, I did kind of grow to just kind of think like, oh, it's just a narrator. Who cares? Like, it didn't really bother me as time went on. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I would agree that it would have been better if like it wasn't just so constant.
Right. And I think there are ways to use a narrator cleverly. And in something like a Lord of the Rings that starts out with heavy narration, that's an epic high fantasy series. You kind of need that in that sense, so the audience member is caught up on what this world is and what the hell's going on. I don't need a world building blurb for West Virginia. But
Yeah.
and also and maybe there are elements of this I didn't pick up on because it was the first viewing, but maybe have a narrator that's unreliable or a narrator that's like you're not sure what the narrator's talking about until the end of the movie, and then it all comes into focus. Just going back to Mistborn, the book that in the first Mistborn book, there are these little blurbs. They all of Brandon Sanderson's books that I've read have these little blurbs at the start of a chapter, and he doesn't explain fully what they are. But at the end of the first book, you get this big revelation of the plot, and it puts all of those blurbs that you've been reading into this whole new context that totally changes your understanding of the story. And it's not narration exactly, but it's a metatextual element that's there that makes you curious, and then the plot delivers on that curiosity. as opposed to just straight up narration. Like, and don't tell me what a character's thinking. That's the biggest thing, I think.
Yeah.
Let me
Well, I mean, there's a lot of
interpret.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to be fair, a lot of brooding in this film. You know, Tom Holland just kind of sitting there smoking his, looking at something.
Yeah.
You know, so I was like, yeah, I appreciate some narration or some like, you know, foresight into what's happening in his head. But yeah, it would have been interesting if the narrator could have been proved to be a bit unreliable, because then that opens the door for like multiple levels of like narration, or like, you know, or like what you were talking about. Like, I just finished watching Grand Budapest Hotel last night, or just rewatching it.
Yeah,
I love that film. But you know, you
it.
have like, yeah, there's like so many different levels of like narrative in that story. So it's like, it kind of starts out like super high, like someone's just reading a book, and then it's like the author's tale, and then you go one level deeper, and then it's okay, and then here's the real story, and it's like, okay, so
that's great.
And then, but then once you have those multiple narratives in play, you know, there is like a certain, you know, if it's difficult to put in the words. If the narrator is unreliable, then that kind of throws into question like everything about the story. You know, maybe it happened differently. Maybe like there's something that they're exaggerating.
It engages you as an audience
like an interesting
member. Makes you think.
We have those different levels.
Yeah,
it makes you think a lot about like what's actually happening. And I mean, this story did that to a certain degree, but you know, I felt like everything was a bit reliable. Like from start to finish, it was like, this is how the story was. There's no like leeway.
Yeah, it was presented very objectively, which is fine. That's not a problem. It's but a narrator, that makes the need for a narrator even less so, I think, because we're viewing this story. We weren't really viewing this story from any one character's perspective, I don't think. It because Arvin is the closest we have to a protagonist, but we're really following all of these different people from their own point of view, and it doesn't really, like, I'm trying to think of the best example to give of a subjectively told story, but I mean, like, I don't know, it's not the best example, but like, The Force Awakens is told from Rey's point of view. The film is showing us her perspective on something. Like, at the end of the movie, when she reaches out to Luke with the lightsaber, she's not actually standing there for 35 seconds looking at him with her eyes, like, open and mouth shut, not saying anything. That's her experience of what that moment feels like. This did not have that type of thing, at least that I caught. So it makes me think, like, why are you telling me what I've just seen? Just let me, and I harp on it as much as I am, but it just really, really bothered me.
I'm sure that there's plenty of people out there that'll kind of agree with that, because, like, you know, I did read some reviews like really quickly. Like, I didn't read them like word for word, but there was like some reviews out there online that stated like the film was kind of incoherent. It was like a little bit rambling, and some people said like at times it was a little bit boring. Do you have any thoughts about that? Like, did it feel incoherent to you or anything like that?
Well, I'll start with
too
the last one. Or anything? I was never bored, I'll say that. And I wouldn't say incoherent. I would say more unclear. Because, like I said earlier, with the end of the movie, I just don't know what it was trying to tell me, and but for a while I was like, why are we following this murder couple and the cop? This doesn't. But then as soon as Arvin's car breaks down, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. I see where this is going. But also, just the big question in my head is just why. Why are the things happening the way they are? What is the story being told? Like, other than the biting critique of evangelicalism, what was that? Was that what it was going for? And I don't know. I'm just so divided on. I was interested the entire way through, but I don't think I was ever having a good time, if that makes sense. Which is okay. Which is okay. Not
Y'all
everything
agree-
needs to be fun to watch. That's a dumb way to look at movies. If you're like, I just want... No, it's not. That's fine. If you want to just have fun at movies, that's A-okay. But not all movies need to be made the same. That things are different. They serve different needs. I just am so... And I purposely didn't read about the intentions of the author or the writers before having this conversation because I didn't want it to color my
Oh yeah, me too.
opinions at all. But I would be very interested to read what the hell they were going for because they probably accomplished it and I just missed it. I don't know.
It's possible. Yeah, I would agree. It was a little bit unclear. Like to a certain degree, I do agree that it was a little bit rambling. Like there was all these different characters, and like some of them we like they're brought into the story real quick, and then they're taken out real quick.
Like
you
the
know, or
mobster
they're
guys.
like introduced really quickly at the end. Yeah, like the mobster. Yeah. Or,
I kind of like the mobster guys
the,
that like they just live in the same house together.
Yeah,
Guys are cooking breakfast.
It was
It's
like,
like,
who
where's
these
your
guys?
boss? Oh, he's upstairs. What? What is the relationship between these two men? And it,
and then he just shoots them. It's like, okay.
dude, he was making you eggs.
Yeah. Come on. Yeah, like sometimes they would bring in some characters like that. And it's like, what was the point of having those characters there? But yeah, I would say that sometimes it wasn't as clear as I would have liked it. But I think maybe one thing that they, aside from the religion aspect, maybe they were focusing more on like, just a discussion about like sin and trauma, maybe just like how things can pass from generation to generation, like because I have heard about like some ideas of like like I don't think it's like actually like verified in science or anything like that, but like like trauma that's kind of transferred through your DNA or something like that, like from one generation to the next generation, maybe like something that's like super traumatic. I think that they mentioned it like really briefly in Watchmen, so maybe that's why it's like lodged in my brain.
The show or the comic / movie?
The show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like maybe like when a really traumatic event happens, how does that influence you as a person, and does that kind of like transfer into like your own progeny? Like, do they like feel like ripple effects from it?
Right. I don't, and I'm out of my purview here. I'm not a scientist, but I don't know about all that. But trauma, I definitely believe trauma can be passed down from generation to generation. I mean, it's because I mean, just look at Willard was his name, Bill Skarsgård. He sees that soldier skinned and crucified in the North Pacific in the war, and then he does the same thing to the dog to sacrifice the dog to God so his wife won't die, and obviously that doesn't work, and so he instills the same trauma he experienced at war in his son, and he also passes on his violent tendencies to his son through pretty like straight up instruction. It's like, pick your time and go beat the shit out of people. Damn, what were those bullies trying to do to Lenora? Were they just bullying her, or was that a sexual thing? I was unclear on that.
Yeah, I think it was both. I think that they were picking on her because she's all different and stuff, and they were maybe considering doing some sexual abusive stuff with her. I wasn't very fond of that part of the story either, but to a certain degree, Lenora is kind of the spitting image of her own mother. Her own mother was like evangelical Christian, she was devout and she loved the preacher to death. And then the same thing happened to Lenora. She was devout, she loved God, and she saw everything as a test, and then she met her end because of the preacher.
Yeah, you want to talk about Robert Pattinson?
So maybe let's talk about Robert Pattinson. One of the draws of this movie, honestly.
His performance was great. I really liked. I think all the performances were great. Actually, Tom Holland, his Britishness only slipped through like for a split second. I think. Otherwise, I was pretty convinced. But I think Pattinson may have been the standout performance for me. As much as his character was just a horrible, horrible person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is phenomenal. Like he is like I feel like he's got such a good range on him. Like, you know, I I look back on myself like in middle school and how much I kind of just despised him for being in the Twilight series. And then today, I've seen like The Lighthouse and I've seen this movie and in
He's a
like,
great actor.
I just want more Robert Pattinson. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he's a great actor. And like I'm sorry I ever doubted him when I was younger.
There's a great just about him as a person. He I don't remember the story he told, but he was in an interview and he just told this wild story. And then he just like went into this incredible amount of detail. And then in a later interview with a different reporter, they asked him about it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I just made that up. It was like really early in the morning. I was tired and bored, so I just made it up." I'm gonna look it up. Good.
That's bold.
Pattinson made up story.
I mean, he can sell anything.
Robert Pattinson makes up a story about a dead clown. Okay, he.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Okay, Robert Pattinson made an inexplicable decision to handle it like a sociopath. Matt Lauer opened the interview about the circus theme movie. This was for Water for Elephants when he was doing press work. And if Pattinson ever dreamed of running away to the circus? No, Pattinson responded. He did not. The first time I went to see the circus, somebody died. One of the clowns died. And it just didn't happen. It's a completely fake story. Yeah. Oh, man.
Go Robert Pattinson. That guy could come in and tell me that my mom, like, an alien or something, and I would believe him. Like,
yeah. But it's like, of course the reporter believed him. Who the hell lies in a press interview like that? It just, like, yeah, clown died. Oh God, I'm crying.
Yeah, it's a bold story about.
But back to the movie and his less fun character. He sucked. I mean, not Robert Pattinson, the preacher. Remember, they make those pork livers. Is that what it was, or whatever?
Yeah, it was like pork liver.
And he just like turns it, and it's like, I have to be kind to the poor, so I'm gonna eat all of these, so you all don't have to. It's like, dude, those look good.
Oh, it's like
such a manipulator.
Yeah, seriously, like it's so clear that this like preacher is like a sociopath. That like he's got like a very warped mentality of like or perception of like what reality is and what he can get away with because he's a preacher. He's like, well, everyone trusts me, and if I just frame it as like the word of God, people will believe me. Like he's like a master of manipulation, and that really came across in his performance. Like he was so smooth and so calculated, and gosh, that accent is so good.
Yeah, I did love when the first preacher, Lenora's dad, after he killed his wife and he was in the car with his brother, and then he explains why he did what he did to his brother, and his brother's like, that doesn't sound like you spoke to God. It sounds like a crazy person stabbed his wife with a screwdriver.
I watched it. You tried to reanimate her.
Yeah.
You didn't. You looked crazy, dude.
and the movie doesn't really touch on it all that much, but did he frame his brother for the murder? Or no, he left the body in the woods, I guess, but he just left his brother who can't walk, by the way, just left him in a car on the side of the road.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's a good point. Maybe they didn't find the body for like 7 years.
Yeah,
so it kind of makes me wonder what happened to his brother. Did he die in that car? Did he get out?
Yeah, he's never mentioned again, is he?
Him?
He is never mentioned again.
Yeah.
What the hell?
I feel like that's one of the critiques of like the rambling nature of this film is it's like, yeah, what happened to that character? He just last time we saw him, he was locked in a car.
Yeah. It does focus heavily on specific characters for specific parts of the movie. And yeah, it was such a weird movie, man. It's so strange.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this about the female characters in the film,
Uh-huh.
because I feel like there were some female characters in there, but it really just felt like they were used as plot devices. Did you feel that way?
Um, for Lenora, yes. Because it did
Hmm.
feel like she is basically there to drive Arvin's story. Um, yeah. Let's see, who else was there? I mean, there's Bill Skarsgård's wife. Yes. Um, she basically enters the plot to die. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then
Sadie.
Lenora's mom.
Well, yeah, oh yeah, Lenora's mom. Oh yeah, right. She was a different person. Yeah, her too.
Yeah,
The only exception I would say would be Sadie, but maybe because she seemed to have a little bit more screen time and agency, and she was. We got scenes of her thinking about things and trying to make decisions and stuff like that. Um, so she was maybe the only one that was fully developed as a character. That's interesting to think
yeah,
about.
that was serial killer,
The
right?
serial killer, yeah, she was the wife.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, because I would say, and maybe I was just bullshitting earlier when I talked about this movie being shot objectively, because it seems like the scenes of the serial killer couple earlier on were more from Carl's perspective, and towards the end it shifts to her.
Hmm.
And she dies. She gets shot through the neck.
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
was
for her. Yeah, I
mhm.
definitely. I'm sorry. Um, yeah, I would say that the female characters definitely felt like they were just there to push the plot along. Like,
Mhm.
unfortunately, like they didn't have a lot of screen time. Like even when I was watching it with my
The
girlfriend,
grandmother
we
too.
just
She was just there to
yeah,
try and be.
the grandmother, she was just there to kind of be a support net for them, and it was like, wow, this film really doesn't focus on the females very much, and I mean that's okay, but I mean
Yeah, I mean, it's
I
fine
think
to
it
have
could have been a
stories that
little bit
focus
better
on
if there was.
men. I mean, a lot of Tarantino's movies are male centric. There are exceptions, obviously, but um,
That's true.
like it's okay to choose your subject material. Like a lot of old school artists, like I mean, Monet painted a lot of things, but he's remembered for water lilies. You're going to criticize Monet for painting a bunch of water lilies? No, you're not. But um, I mean, it does speak to the importance of diversity behind the camera. If we're going to have films that are so male centric, we should have a comparable amount that are female centric, and sometimes that comes from putting females behind the camera and in the writers' room.
Hmm.
Hollywood.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This is not a Hollywood
Yeah.
movie. I don't think this is definitely not. But
This is a Netflix movie. This is
yeah, well, I did Netflix make it or did they buy it?
I think that they made it. I'm not entirely sure on
Okay,
that.
yeah, we'd have to look it up,
Let me
but
double check that if I can real quick. Oh, I don't know if I can. But yeah, I do think Netflix like developed it and everything.
okay.
From what I can tell, it's pretty close to the novel. But again, I haven't read the novel, so there's
It
probably
definitely
some
seems like a
discrepancies
passion
there with it.
project to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's written. I mean, it's directed by the same guy who wrote it, and he wrote it with presumably a family member, and the author was involved in the sense that he narrated it. I don't know if he was part of the creative process at all, but I'd be interested to read the book and see how it compares. Um,
Yeah, me too. I might check that out from the library and give it a whirl.
yeah.
I mean, it was definitely a good story all the way through. Let me ask you this about another thing about the story. How did you feel about Sebastian Stan's character, the sheriff?
Um, I found him intriguing. He
Mm,
felt very. He felt like he was from a Tarantino movie almost, like Tarantino light. Uh,
yeah,
and
yeah, I can see that.
his story was probably the most tenuously tied to the rest of it. He was, I will be fully honest, by the time Sadie and Carl got killed, I'd forgotten that Sebastian Stan was related to Sadie. And it took me a minute when he got the call. I was like, oh right, oh that's not good. That's not gonna go great. But yeah, it was interesting because he's just kind of, when he's first introduced, he's just getting a hand job in his police cruiser, and he just seems like a meathead douchebag. And then he comes back later on and is a corrupt sheriff who's just kind of like critical. He's only in like 5 scenes, right? I think he's not in it a ton.
Yeah, he's not. He's not a very like dominant character. He's kind of like a more side character to the story, but he ultimately does kind of play like a significant role there at the end because he destroys some evidence, and he tracked Arvin down to
he becomes
his old property, and
he's like eventually related until suddenly he's not. But I guess that's the whole movie. It's parallel stories happening at the same time. I think I would have appreciated more of the murder couple and Sadie not ceasing to enjoy what they were doing, because we go from her being pretty on board with it to suddenly she's just not on board at all anymore, and we don't see that development at all. It's odd.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
They weren't the focus of the story.
Yeah, maybe.
So I don't know.
I kind of agree. Yeah, I would have liked to see a little bit more of the serial killer aspect. That's because you have like 2 halves of the or at least like 2 different like families basically. You have like Arvin and Lenora and their families and stuff like that, and then you have the serial killer and the serial killer couple and Sebastian's character. And, and it's it's kind of like how those different narratives merge up at the end.
Right.
Yeah, it's difficult to kind of be like, well, who could have used more screen time? Yeah, I do think that the husband and wife could have used a little bit more, just so we could understand why they're doing it, because it just seems like they're just killing because it's fun.
Yeah.
And because he wants to be closer to God.
Mm-hmm. Like, who probably could have used less screen time was Bill Skarsgård. I think we spent a lot of time with him early on, and aside from the violence he shows to his son, I mean, we didn't need to know much more about him. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I hesitate to give like too definitive of opinions on a movie I watched for the first time like 12 hours ago, but
totally.
But it's so strange. It just felt like the time was too divided for me for a lot of it. I never, and maybe the main character was supposed to be the place, the location, and the vibe that was going on there. I don't know. Again, I did my best to be in analytical mode last night, but usually that's a second viewing mindset for me. So we'll see. But I didn't hate it or anything. It's just, it frustrated me when watching it. The performances, though, were really good. I like the performances. I thought the atmosphere of the movie was really well done. It kind of, it's not the same, but it had a similar grime to True Detective Season 1, which I think accomplishes a lot of what this movie was kind of going for. Maybe better. But True Detective is like the best thing to have ever been put on television, so it's not a fair comparison.
No, I mean, a part of me kind of wonders, at the start there, because we have this whole, the 30 minutes of like getting to know Bill Skarsgård's character and like understanding him, and then ultimately he just commits suicide. So, a part of me just kind of wondered, wouldn't it make more sense to kind of like sparse that out through the film as kind of like facts and stuff, because
flashbacks.
First time that we meet Arvin, yeah, it's like first we need to get like all this extra information about like his father and his upbringing and stuff like that. But like, I don't know, maybe it could have been a little bit more interesting or a little bit more cohesive if like sprinkled throughout the film we get like these little snippets of like the past of like his memories and we're building to Arvin, but maybe not.
Well, the movie as is kind of puts itself into an episode 2 problem where when we see Anakin in episode 2, he's a completely different character than the one we watched in the previous film. And when Arvin becomes Tom Holland, he is a completely different character than the last time we saw him. And movie is like 2 hours and 20 minutes, and we spend the first 35 minutes with Willard and Little Arvin, and that's important information to have. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a general general guideline of writing is you want to sparse out the information like that. Would those scenes of Arvin being hesitant to go to church and talking about what his father did and stuff have been more interesting if we hadn't already seen exactly what happened? Like, his dad comes back from the war, doesn't really care about religion, finds religion again. His wife gets cancer. He crucifies a dog to God. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe that should have been, and maybe the reveal of the dog crucifixion should have come towards the end when he's going back to the house or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it could also have done some interesting stuff for like some of the other characters too, because like like we were just talking about with the sheriff character, we are introduced to him like at the start of the film, like when he's a younger cop. It's just like a quick scene where he's getting the hand job in the car, and then we don't really see him again until like the latter half of the film. Yeah. So why don't we just have him in the latter half, and you could still have that flashback to the night,
right,
where he comes as the first responder and everything. So you get some background information then, and so that way at the end you're not kind of like, wait, where does this guy come into the story again? I don't remember him. Why is he here?
Maybe he and Arvin should have had more of a relationship. Like, they should have maybe kept in touch over the years, and maybe the type of relationship where they know each other as like person and cop who helped person, and so Arvin isn't aware of his sister and all that stuff. But then when Arvin kills his sister in self-defense, that adds a level of emotional depth that we don't get in the movie because these two are friends and he killed his sister and da-da-da-da. The storylines were too disconnected almost, and then when they came together, it wasn't entirely satisfying. Because
I would agree.
Yeah, and it's like the murder couple killed Lenora's dad, the first preacher, but that didn't have anything to do. Well, I get. Oh shit. Well, if the first preacher hadn't been killed, Robert Pattinson may never have come to town and seduced Lenora, which may have resulted in her not being killed. But also, he did kill his wife, so he probably would have gone to jail and resulted in a new preacher anyway. So who knows? It's just a whole convoluted mess of different lives being connected, and it's a fun.
I mean, overall, I would definitely
for sure. There's a lot going on here. But
and I think that's kind of like a central part of like American Gothic horror stuff. Like you read The Road, you read Child of God, you read like William Faulkner and stuff. Those books, I mean, yes, you might be able to like pull like one little like truth out of it or one message out of it, but there's so many different ways that you could look at The Road, that you could look at Child of God, that you could look at like those pieces of literature. And I think that's kind of what this story went to do as well, is say, maybe we don't really want to have one central message. Maybe it's more just a discussion of various themes and a lot of different elements to come together, something like that maybe.
Yeah, and it could just be painting a picture of. I wonder how much of this is personal experience. No, it wouldn't be personal experience, but like a vibe or a story that he'd heard about or something like that, or if this was entirely fictional. And you're right. I mean,
that's a good question.
I don't want to spoil the ending of The Road, but I won't, because it's a great book and movie. Actually, I like the movie too, but the movie makes a very distinct change to the story that makes it less ambiguous, which I'm okay with. But the story ends in a very open-ended way in the road, and you're not really sure what you should be feeling, like apprehensive or satisfied or happy or scared. You don't know, and it all depends on like your read on people. You've read The Road, right? Do you know kind of
Oh yeah,
what I'm talking about without spoilers?
yeah. I think I know. Well, I haven't seen the movie, so I don't remember exactly which one you're talking about. But yeah, at the end of the book, yeah, you are kind of like, oh,
You are
there's
at
a
the
lot
end
of
of the movie. You are given more evidence of what a character says than you are in the book. And that evidence in the movie makes you feel more at ease with the conclusion of the story than you would in the book, because in the book you're like, oh, this guy could be lying. Like, I don't know if we should trust him and if the boy should listen to what he's saying. But in the movie, it is made very clear that what this guy is saying is true. That is so vague, but if the book is like in your mind, you may know what I'm talking about. You may not. I don't know.
Yeah, I now that you're talking about it, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. So, yeah, that's
sorry, listeners who haven't read or watched The Road, but I don't want to ruin it for you. It's a good read it and watch it. Has Viggo Mortensen,
definitely.
Lord of the Rings in the movie. He's the man.
Oh,
and I'm not.
Yeah, I'll
I'm not
definitely
saying,
check that one out.
I'm not saying Viggo Mortensen is the man. He is the man, but the character he plays is called the man. So, the man and the boy.
The man and the boy.
Yeah.
That should have been the name of our podcast, The Man and the Boy.
Well, who's the man? Who's the boy?
It's open-ended.
Oh God.
Just like litter.
Just like the devil.
Well, I mean, yeah, get back. Yeah. So many different ways you can approach it. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I would definitely recommend this film. You know, if you want like a good escape from reality, if you want to just get wrapped up in a good story for like 2 hours, this is definitely the film to check out for an hour, or at least like one of the things that should be on your list to watch. So I would recommend this. Do you have anything else to add? I'm
gonna be slightly less enthusiastic with a recommendation. I think it's worth watching, but I was mixed on it overall. I think you should watch it because, I mean, we just talked about it for an hour. There's interesting conversation to be had around it, but it's wasn't really my favorite, but it intrigued me. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
it's an intriguing film. And it'll spark some good ideas. But is it the best movie ever made? Nah.
No. But I mean, you don't. If you're interested in film and storytelling, there are lessons to be learned in everything. I mean, if you're only watching the absolute best movies, you're probably not gonna. I mean, it's the same with someone who just wins all the time and succeeds all the time. You're not gonna learn and get better by doing that. So you should watch movies that are just okay or are interesting but don't quite hit the mark, and just start movies that are straight up bad. You know, there are lessons to be learned from watching The Room too.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's like, and I think this movie is probably a good example of the fact that you never really know what you're making is going to turn out when you're making it. You may have a very clear vision of something, and as an actor on set, you're doing your performance, you're doing your part, but no one on a movie set has the full picture until it's in the edit bay and it's coming together. You're really just kind of going on instinct for a bit, and I mean instinct and experience, but you never really know until you see the final product. And who knows? Watch it. Yeah. Fuck it, watch it.
Yeah. That's a good way to kill an afternoon.
Yeah. But cool. Well,
okay.
Moving on from that main story, what else have you been watching, reading, playing? What's going on in your media life?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, just the other night, like I said earlier, we watched the Grand Budapest Hotel. Solid film. I'm always a fan of Wes Anderson films. Like we were just in the mood for something that was like a Wes Anderson film. So we were like, let's put that one on. I don't remember it particularly well. I watched it on like a Tinder date, and I just don't. I didn't have a very good memory of what happened to that movie, so I was happy to give it a good rewatch. Yeah, I mean, anything that, he's so powerful with his colors in his films. Like every scene is so like kind of looks campy, or like just like a little like cliche.
I've only seen Moonrise Kingdom so far. It's a big hole in my filmography, but
Moonrise Kingdom.
Yeah, it feels like it from that movie alone. It feels like his worlds are very hand constructed and whimsical. Moonrise Kingdom is so funny. I love that movie.
Yeah, it's a solid film, and so Wes Anderson. That was a fun film to watch. So I would recommend getting into those films. Grand Budapest Hotel, Moonrise Kingdom. Those are good ones to watch.
Oh wait, real quick.
Been watching RuPaul's Drag
Race. Just a funny bit of trivia. So the first preacher in Devil All the Time, the one who stabs his wife with a screwdriver, he looked familiar, and I'm like, he looks kind of like the guy from Silicon Valley and The Office, like Gabe from The Office. And I'm like, I don't think it's him, but I gotta look him up. It's not him. It is Dudley Dursley from Harry Potter.
Hey,
that is him.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't spot that.
Well, I mean, he was a lot bigger in Harry Potter, but that's him. That's the same actor. I was like, whoa, that's crazy.
Wow. I guess, when you look at the nose and the ears, maybe you can kind of see it. But yeah, he looks very different from how he did in like the Harry Potter film. So good catch there.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't catch it. I just went to IMDb. I would never have.
That's how you catch things sometimes.
Sorry.
Yeah, right.
RuPaul's Drag Race. You were watching that?
Oh no, yeah. I've just been watching the 13th season of it. I love RuPaul. Like, the drag, like, drag isn't for everyone, but it's a good expression of like, creativity, and it's a kind of a good examination of like human sexuality and just how people are coping in like the LGBT community, or like how they're like, their own personal struggles through it. And so, it's very interesting. And this season is actually incredibly interesting. It's season 13, and they filmed it all at the start of the pandemic. So like they just actually did an episode, like their most recent episode was just like, here's how we did it, and here's how we kind of like filmed it and everything. So like, they went through the entire process of like how all the contestants had to like quarantine for like two weeks, and like all these like rigorous protocols and everything. It's like just very interesting. I would definitely recommend people to check out RuPaul. It's a very fun show. And like,
you guys have been talking about that for several years now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a fun show to watch. Like, it's just a competition reality TV show, and it's just fun.
Cool.
What about you? What have you been watching?
Well, Friday night, as I said, I read the Words of Radiance, second Stormlight Archive book. I had like 180 pages left of it, I think, and in my head, it was like, that's just a little bit more than 100. I'm just going to read this for a couple hours and finish it up, and I was wrong. It took me, let's see, I opened it after WandaVision, which was at like 5:30, and then I took Shadow on a walk, I made my dinner, and then I read the book the entire night until 1:30 in the morning. But it like, I had gotten to the point in the story where the final like action climax is happening, and I'm like, you can't stop in the middle of that. So it was awesome. It's a great book. It was so epic. It's exciting to see. I'm halfway through the released books of the series now, which is really neat. I have 2 left, but I'm going to take a little bit of a break, read some smaller things for a bit before diving into another 1,000-page book that'll take me a month to read. And let's see. Also, last night, after watching Devil All the Time, I wanted something a little bit more positive to kind of cleanse my palate before going to bed. So I popped on the pilot of Superman and Lois. Fantastic.
Oh, How is that?
It's so good. I was like, we had talked about the Arrowverse in the first episode, and I've been a decent fan of them for a long time. This episode was better than maybe anything they've made. It was
Wow.
It was so excellent. Tyler Hoechlin is like, I think, the best modern Superman. And I don't know how this fits in with the rest of the Arrowverse, if it does at all, because like I said, like they had just had kids last time we saw them in the other Arrowverse shows, and now their kids are in high school. But whatever, it's a good show. So it's basically dealing about Clark and Lois are trying to live their lives as reporters, and Clark as Superman, while also raising two teenage sons, one of whom has anxiety, and it's just really good. It visually, it borrows a lot from, I think, what Snyder was going for in Man of Steel. It's a little muted on the color palette, and it has some of those, majestic shots of Superman and stuff like that, but it combines that with the more positive aspect of Hoechlin's portrayal of the character. So Superman is still super hopeful and doing the right thing all the time, but he's struggling because he's like, am I a good dad? I'm not there for my kids because I have to be Superman for the world. And it was... I don't know if it's going to maintain this quality, but for a pilot, which are normally weaker than other episodes of the show, it was wildly good. And even the effects were better than I'm used to seeing on the CW. In Supergirl, when she does super strength and lifts like heavy things, it doesn't look quite right because you're on the CW budget, so it looks like she's just kind of chilling there holding up nothing. But in this, which is fine for what the shows are and their budget, like that's okay. But in this, there's a scene where Clark lifts up a truck and he just kind of like floats into the air holding it above his head, and you could feel the weight of the truck. It all felt right. It was just good. It was just like nice to see that interpretation of Superman given his due, especially with the Snyder Cut approaching, where it's going to be more of the mopey, sad, obligatory take on Superman, where he's like, I will save people because I have to, but maybe I shouldn't. It's nice to see Superman where his mom doesn't tell him, save them or don't. You don't owe this world a thing, which is the Batman v Superman, Martha Kent, which I really... Yeah. But, Superman and Lois... better than I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be good. It exceeded my expectations so far. But
that's great to hear. I might check that out.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah,
I don't think you have to be caught up on Arrowverse stuff to enjoy it. It seems like it's going to be more or less its own thing. I wouldn't be shocked if they bring in Supergirl for an episode or two, just because they're cousins. The characters are, but I'd be curious to see hear what you think of it if you watch it. So let me know.
Yeah, totally. I just had a quick question about like the kids. Do you know if the kids are going to have superpowers, like the teenagers?
I don't know if I want to answer that.
I'm just curious.
Well,
yeah.
Okay. Well, in the comic books, Superman's son Jonathan Kent does have superpowers. But I don't think I want to say any more than that. Okay. But yeah, he has two.
Yeah, you gotta keep that surprise.
Yeah, but it's I don't know. It was just a really well-made episode of TV. I liked it a lot, and it had me. And the opening scene of it is so great because let me see if I can find it. So, if you Google Action Comics 1, you will see a cover of Superman holding like a green car above his head in his original suit. It's I believe the first appearance of the character. They have that. That's the opening of the show. It's great. He's in his like he's in his like cheesy old costume. It looks like it's felt and it has red underwear on it, and it just cool. There's so much more positivity in this version of Superman. It's like he saves a kid from a car, walks up like wide ass smile on his face, and the kid's like, "Thanks, cool costume." And Superman's like, "Thanks, my mom made it for me." Just flies off. It's so adorable and positive, and I'm like, just let Henry Cavill do this, okay? He's a good actor. Let him have fun as Superman. It's goddamn Superman. It's not Homelander. Not that
he doesn't have to
Henry
be
Cavill is
crazy dark.
Homelander. He's not a murderer, but like, yeah, let the bastion of positivity be positive and hopeful in your movies. Not it's like
Right.
That's part of why Superman and Batman are so cool as characters, because and Batman is positive a lot of the time too, but there's a great comic page that I've seen shared around a lot. I don't know what book it's from, but it's this girl and she's standing on the roof of a building, like crying, and it's very clear she's about to jump off the building. And then the next panel, you just see like a hand on her shoulder and Superman's behind her, and he's like, I forget the character's name, but he's like, your doctor really did get held up in traffic. And he just like hugs her.
Ooh.
And it's like, that's
just a good guy.
That's Superman. We don't get superheroes do that kind of stuff enough. Just like be there for people. And we should. It's great. Especially in the TV format where you have more time. Not everything has to be save the world. You can just have time for those little moments. And I don't know. But yeah, that's what I've been watching. I went on about that for a long time. Sorry.
Well, that's okay.
You got anything else?
That's cool.
Oh wait, I should check for audience questions. We probably don't have any, but gonna check anyway. I meant to do that before the show. Nothing in email. There's gonna be nothing.
Hey, that's okay. I mean, if someone's made it this far along, we greatly appreciate it. We'll take the time here just to say thank you very much. We're clearly just starting out on this podcasting stuff, and we're still tweaking. So we're glad today's episode was a little bit shorter, and that we've been able to, talk in depth about, a main story like the Devil all the time, and that we're trying this out. We're talking about entertainment stuff, and there's, with WandaVision ending next week and the Snyder Cut coming out, we'll have some awesome episodes coming up here in the next few weeks as well.
Indeed. And yeah, on the note, we have no audience questions because our audience is a little tiny, which is fine. But if you do want to get in touch with us, send us an email, playpauserewindpod@gmail.com, or hashtag playpauserewindpod on Twitter. And, if there ever are any questions, I'll grab them. I'll remember next time, I promise. Also, on Niles' note, WandaVision ends this coming Friday, and in light of that, we are going to release an episode next week. Let's see. So this comes out on Wednesday. So WandaVision finale is 2 days after this episode airs. We will have another episode the following week, and then we're going to be back on our 2-week cadence. So WandaVision next week, Snyder Cut 2 weeks after that, and then we'll see from there. And if you liked the new stuff and want us to keep doing some semblance of it, let us know, too. Not opposed to doing the news, but figured our podcast were getting a little bloated, and that was an easy segment to slice off a half hour or so.
Yeah, great. Yeah, if you guys have like any recommendations of films to check out or anything that you want us to share our 2 cents on, feel free to let us know.
Yes.
We are truly nerds at heart. We love Star Wars and we love Marvel, but of course, other things out there in the world, like The Devil All the Time, and there's plenty of other movies out there on streaming services and TV shows. So plenty of things to watch, review, talk about, and just comment on.
100%. Niles, where can people find you online?
Oh, you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Niles Got No Styles. So feel free to give me a follow or send me a DM, whatever. What about you, Dylan? Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at DylanD1026 and on Twitter at DDayMovies. You can also find me on YouTube at D-Day Movies. Probably best to go through my Instagram. I actually have a new video coming up this week for the first time in almost a year. That will come out.
Yay!
If you're watching this on Wednesday, the day it launches, the video will come out tomorrow at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. It's about Stannis Baratheon from Game of Thrones. So feels good to have something upcoming, something done for that channel. It's been so long. But yeah, and we have a link tree in our Twitter and Instagram bios for the podcast, Play, Pause, Rewind Pod. Those are also linked in at least my socials. But yeah, if you have a preferred podcast platform that we are on, it will be in the link tree. If we're not on it, let us know, and I will work on getting that set up. But yeah, thank you all for watching.
Well, that's exciting, man. I'll definitely check out that video.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, but I think that's from us this week, right? Like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Subscribe if you're on your podcast feed. Leave a review if you're so inclined on the podcast feed. Apparently, that helps us out in some way that I don't understand. I don't think the subject matter of your review matters at all, so just say whatever you want. You could say you had a pizza, and that would probably count for something. All right, well, yeah. Thanks, everyone. Have a great couple weeks or week. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.